template, and style development. This can be one of the most fun, yet time-consuming tasks of presentation design. I'm going to limit ourselves to just 2 hours to find and create the right template for Medco's presentation. This task is made easier because we're using Digital Juice's Presenters Toolkit, which provides me with thousands of pre-designed templates and backgrounds, and then it's just a matter of choosing the fonts and the color palette. With 25% of our 40 hours already used, we're ready to move to step 4, digital content acquisition. This is where we get all the graphics and content that goes into the presentation. We'll spend some more time talking about where to find great graphics and multimedia content in Chapter 4. But for now, with our Medco presentation, we're spending about 6 hours to find and insert the right images to complement our bullet points that we've written. I'll be using a few stock photo libraries from Photodisk focused on people and medical images and importing these images right into the presentation. I'm also scanning a few pages from our company's annual report to put into the presentation. I'm saving the scanned image as a JPEG file and putting all the other content into a folder called Raw Content. During these 6 hours, I'm also going to do some research to find a supporting statistic about human resources and a stirring motivational quotation to add some more depth to my presentation and connect better with my audience. This step is more about acquiring graphics and content and editing than assembling them in PowerPoint. And remember, this whole concept is about managing your time during presentation development, so keep a watchful eye on the clock and work within your allocated time window. Early on, it's helpful to check out the end venue where you'll be presenting. This fifth step in the process may not always be possible, but try to get to the location where you'll be giving your presentation so that you can test out the presentation in draft mode and see how the text and the graphics will appear. Make sure it can be read from the back of the room and if the color and contrast is appropriate. If not, you've got to go back and make those revisions. For Medco, we've allocated 2 hours to check out the classroom where we'll be presenting. It seats about 40 people and it has a nice rear screen projector. I've done some practicing and I know that the smallest font I can read from the back of the room is 20 points. Also, checking out your presentation venue can help reduce stage fright. This midpoint in the process is a good time and place to review your presentation with your colleagues and make sure that you're on track with its look and feel and core messages and bullet points. Here's a short story. I recently worked on a multimedia presentation for a client in Florida. After about 50 hours of development, we were in the home stretch, or so I thought. My client proudly showed this final draft to her boss for the first time. The boss liked it, but he had some major edits. It wound up taking another 20 hours of work. This time could have been saved if the top man was involved early on in the project's development. The lesson here is to get everyone of authority to agree on the presentation concepts or drafts early on to avoid any rework or additional time. Step 6. Core development and editing. This is the meat and potatoes of presentation design. It all comes together here. It's also where most people typically start. Fortunately for us in our Medco presentation, the past 18 hours have given us a solid head start that will help us edit and develop the rest of the presentation much faster. We've allocated 2 days, 10 hours, for this step to build upon the presentation outline and structure and add the graphics into PowerPoint. Our presentation now has 40 pages, not including the 10 additional title slides for different sections. For our 45-minute talk, this averages out to a bit more than 1 minute per slide, which is a nice, healthy pace. To help estimate the time that we can spend with graphics, we're going to use a 4-level design formula that I've developed. At the low end of this formula is Level 1 Design, which allocates an average of 3.5 minutes per slide to fix up existing graphics and textual content. The focus is on speed, visual layout, improvement, and consistency. Next is Level 2, which allocates 15 minutes per page for basic design and enhancement. It's suitable for basic text, bullets, basic tables, charts, and inserting graphics. Level 3 is where things get more graphically complex. 45 minutes per slide is allocated for design and development. It's suitable for charts and graphs, stock photos, basic photo montages. It's at this level that we start using Adobe Photoshop for added graphical impact. At the high end of our scale is level 4, where we focus on graphical enhancement, content editing, improvement, and more complex animation and text effects. Early on, I suggest that you designate the level of each slide that you're envisioning, calculate the time, and start creating, working to ensure that you stay within the time frame allocated for each slide. Now, this design formula has been enormously helpful in helping to estimate the time and subsequent costs in creating presentations for our clients. I encourage you to adopt it or something similar on your projects and watch your productivity take off. For our 40-page Medco presentation, I've allocated 8 pages as level 1 for just about an hour of development, 30 of the pages as level 2 for 7.5 hours, and 2 pages as level 3 for 1.5 hours. That works out to just about 10 hours. After all the text is in, the graphics are formatted, and there's a general feeling that the presentation is good to go, we finally get to the part that everyone's been waiting for. Step 7, adding slide transitions and animations. In my experience, I've seen a tremendous amount of time wasted on transitions and animations. Yes, they may add flair, but it really doesn't change the message of the presentation, and they often detract from the development time and distract from the overall message. And that's why I like to spend just 5% of my working time on effects. I'm sorry, kids, but we can only spend 2 hours on effects for our Medco presentation. After transitions, we transition to the final review and edits. This is another chance to gather the gang and make sure that everything is on the mark, or to work to get it there. New graphics, efficient edits, tweaked transitions. For Medco, we've allocated 2 hours to make it right. Practice, practice, practice. That's the essence of the 9th step of our presentation time management approach. A presentation for a business meeting may not need as much practice, but a speech before a big audience should be well rehearsed before showtime. For the Medco presentation, we've allocated 5 hours for practice and final revisions. I'll practice several times out loud in front of a mirror and before colleagues to make sure it's polished and professional. Finally, the task of printing handouts and distributing your presentation. This can sometimes throw a curveball into the process, since many people don't take into consideration the time required to print or distribute their presentation. It's helpful early on to do a test print to see how many pages per minute your printer prints, and so that you can more accurately estimate the time required for output. Emailing presentations can cause headaches too if the file is too large. Send a draft of the presentation first to test the time it takes to get to your recipient. Plan accordingly and don't get caught by the clock. These 10 steps are just guidelines to help manage your presentation time and prevent the presentation or speech from getting out of control. By spending more time up front on the template, the outline, and the overall content of the presentation, you'll save yourself time in the end. By thoughtful planning and proactive thinking, you'll remain on time, within budget, and deliver a polished presentation.